the good thing is we live in a world where there are really good options. This is not a challenge which cannot be tackled head on and dealt with fairly effectively, to be honest. Like everything cybersecurity or any security really, nothing's going to be bulletproof. Nobody's going to make that pitch, and certainly not me. But it is factual to say that we have some fantastic options today. You just have to be kind of aware, it has to fit with your business and go deliver it.
Behind every Microsoft partner is a story of growth, a story of ambition, and a story of people pushing themselves, their businesses, and technology further. Every week here on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I speak to business, technology, and thought leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem, offering mentorship at scale to the Microsoft partner community. So let's dive into this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Today I am joined by, drumroll please, Mark Taylor from Chorus. How are you today, Mark?
Yeah, very well, thank you, Ollie. Yep, not bad at all. Getting back into swing of things in January and trying to get back up to speed.
Yeah, always the way. Me and Mark we're just talking. We're all just defrosting from the Christmas period. This episode might go out a bit later in January, but this will be a look back, a bit of a time machine for us of realising what the first couple of weeks of January are always like, which is always a bit up and down, isn't it?
Absolutely, yep. Definitely some high points, but also feels a little bit slow at the same time.
Yeah. And Mark, for anyone that doesn't know you, hasn't come across you before, it'd be good just to get a quick 30-second on who you are, what you do, business that you work within, if that's okay, mate.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, Mark Taylor. I'm the founder and CTO at a business called Chorus. We're based down just outside of Bristol in the southwest. Coming up on our 27th year now. So been doing this far too long. And we're kind of three-prong business. So we're very Microsoft focused, but we're kind of traditional MSSP. We're a Dynamics house, and these days our kind of one of our big plays is Microsoft's SOC as a service, cybersecurity, and obviously very important in the world we live in today.
Yeah. We can dive into all of that in a bit more detail and interesting. I've had last couple of conversations I've had on the podcast have been very heavily focused around the Microsoft security stack and what that whole ecosystem looks like. So it'll be interesting to compare notes and see what you guys at Chorus are seeing on that front. But as I always like to start off with on these Microsoft Mentor podcast sessions is to just dip into and get a bit of a feeling as to the person behind Mark and the career journey behind Mark in terms of how that's then got you to ultimately setting up and growing and scaling Chorus. So what do those early years look like when it comes to, interests? Is technology something that's always been ever present? Is that something that came later in life for you, Mark? What does that look like?
Yeah, no. So sadly I am definitely old enough to be early gen in tech, I'm afraid, when it comes to computers. So I was very much a Sinclair, ZX80 Spectrum kind of kid. And went through that whole period in the 80s, the Commodore 64s and the Amigas of the world. So yeah, I transitioned all through that in the teenage years, and definitely got hooked on it, to be honest. Don't think it was particularly clear at that time that wanted it to be a career. So I kind of dallied in it a little bit. I did a little bit of development for the NHS originally when I finished my A levels, and then I had a very strong interest in aviation at the time. So I was flip-flopping and ended up doing 7 years in air traffic control, so something totally different. So did that for a while, and then kind of always had this nagging thing in the back of my mind that I wanted to set up my own business and couldn't quite shake it. So eventually came out, and just where the interest lied, it made sense to do tech, really. So I came back out of air traffic, did a couple of years for a company that's gone now, so a big firm called ICL. Got bought by Fujitsu back in the day, and did a lot of work for them in the defense sector. And as you do when you're kind of in that age span, you suddenly go, yeah, no, I can do this better. I can do this. So jumped out and set up my own business. The oldie, truly classic, out of the parents' bedroom. Give it a go. They were thrilled to have me back, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess with their, I guess there's no doubt some skills and learning and aptitude that you developed whilst you were in what is probably a high pressured environment of air traffic control that have travelled with you through the business years as well, no doubt.
Yeah, it's a lovely career, and it was a really interesting flip flop between the two. And should I stay with it at the time? Really, it was a tough decision, right? And one of the things I always say, one of the great things about a career like that, if I'm perfectly honest, is that incredibly pressured role. I mean, what air traffic controllers do, as you probably most people are well aware, is fantastic, right? And they're incredibly busy, amazing people for handling that pressure. But one of the nice things about a role like that is that you do all your learning, and you get qualified, and you get into the role, and you start delivering it as a job. But when you finish your shift at the end of the day, you kind of take your headset off, put it down, and you walk away, right? You're not thinking about the 5 planes you just spoke to. You're not planning for the 10 the next day, because you've got no idea what the next day is going to be. So there's no point of even thinking about that. So it's a very almost siloed job. When you're working, when you're not, you cannot be, really. Obviously it's not quite that clinical, but it's not too far adrift from that. Whereas obviously when you switch across to IT, you pretty much couldn't make it more the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So especially when you choose to do it for yourself, it very much is a role that you're going to be doing it all the hours that you can sustain it, and that's very much the experience, right? But nature of the character, nature of the beast, as it were. My parents were both in leadership roles in their chosen careers, and I don't think I necessarily had a great deal of choice in terms of my natural inclination took me that way.
Yeah. And so you obviously you do a few years with ICL in a an individual contributor tech type role. Most people, I guess, at that point then to start to grow and develop their their career up a career ladder within organisations. You quite early on have gone down the other path and gone down the founder entrepreneurial type route. What was that like day one? Turning off the lights at ICL, turning on the lights in Chorus 1.0. What did day one to year one look like?
Yeah, it was classic, really. I mean, you've got all the benefits of youth, right? I mean, you're determined, you're energetic, you're clear that you have a goal and a vision, and I can do this better, and I know what I'm doing. We had the very specific goal early on that because we're talking 99 was when the company was set up, sort of in 99. So you're talking a period where Microsoft released their first version of small business server. And so at that point, there was like this really clear defined opportunity, it felt like, to go, hey, small businesses, they're going to want this small business server thing. I've got a bit of background in larger tech, so I definitely can work with tech, and I'm, Microsoft Stack and that sort of stuff. Hey, I can take this to smaller businesses. This is going to be great, right? So that felt really clear and distinct at the time, and there was just you don't have any doubt at that stage, right? You just go all guns blazing, you go at it. So and that's what ended up happening, really. So actually, day one was really clear and focused and energetic, and it felt good, and it was clear what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. I mean, obviously the practicalities of getting out there and finding customers, and that early journey stuff of joining networking groups and learning skills and things that you absolutely did not have or were not even aware that you would have to have, that definitely happened as well. So there was that whole raft of sudden onset of new skills, and what's VAT and what's this finance stuff, and all the early stuff that really hits you hard and fast when you set up a business. So we went through all that, but actually, you know what, it wasn't, we got lucky, it wasn't too bad. We did a good job. We made enough connections, we got enough things to get us going at a reasonable pace, and then it just sort of built from there, really. We were quite lucky. We made a very, very small acquisition about a couple of years after we started. Somebody else who ran a small MSP, they only had like 1-2 staff, and the owner was looking to get out, and he just said, do you want to take it and the customers for a small fee? And we did, and that actually turned out to be a really good move, because it gave us a leg up into a few businesses that then kind of acted as a bit of a cornerstone for Chorus's growth from there, really.
Yeah. I think you hit on something that a lot of founders have in their early journey, and especially in the technology space, where people like yourself that are setting up technology businesses normally are technologists. They're the people that are going in and putting in the small business server into the customer. But then you start to develop and grow a business, and all of a sudden you've got these different hats that you have to start wearing. It's like, what do you mean I've got to think about, like you say, finance or operations, admin, marketing, sales, all of those in those early stages sit on the founder's shoulders, right?
Yeah.
At what point from your side did you start being able to hire people? Was that fairly early on? Did you carry it and do it sort of one-man band for a while? How did that look?
Yeah, I mean, we probably, I think we managed to get to about, I'm going to say it was around 10 staff. And that was probably from, when we set up at the end of 99 to, I'm going to say 2006, something like that. So it was fairly slow going initially, definitely. And, and it was a real grind to add those headcounts and add enough clients to do that. And certainly, obviously, in those early days, because again, it was the kind of technology background set up, you kind of shy away from those commitment to the sales and the marketing roles full time, etc. No question of that. So we definitely, multi-hatted that. And then, got to run that period, and there was a little bit of a change of directions, a couple of new faces, brought in new business partner at the top who wasn't technical. And actually that kind of then was the point where we started to sort of accelerate a little bit and go, okay, actually there's enough mix of skills now. And that was a really interesting lesson there, is to mix up that skill set. And that pulled us on, and we started to accelerate from there, really.
Yeah. And if you look at that sort of time period, 99 to sort of mid 2000s, I guess, was it sort of SMB focused, IT implementation and support services really then where you sort of built your name and built your reputation and built your client book out of then?
Absolutely. Yeah. It was all SBS servers in those days. Obviously all on premise at that point. And real local, what you was very traditional, so very localized, geographically speaking. I mean, there were exceptions, of course. We had a couple of clients in London and further afield, but very what you'd expect and predict, because it was all about being able to get in a car and get to site, because UPS has just died at a customer site, right? So very, very traditional for an IT in that period, I would say.
Yeah. And then when did you start seeing, I guess, a potential sort of shift in the types of opportunities that you were seeing in the market? And I guess, how did the business then start to pivot towards that, as things like Microsoft 365 start coming to market, as the public cloud era started to sort of take or gain traction in the IT space? How did that look at Chorus, and what did that look like from your side as a leader? Right, there's some change happening in the market now. How are we going to start to navigate this?
Yeah, so probably that mid 2000s was kind of, we shifted. When say we shift, we tried harder to get those larger end customers for what we were then. So we were starting to look at the hundreds and couple of hundred seats and sort of focus there a bit, and we had some success there. And one of the things we're particularly proud of course, we managed to keep a lot of those customers for many years. We've had customers for sort of 10-15 years, so that was a good core to maintain for the business. And then as you say, kind of the cloud thing, again, being technologist orientated rather than sales orientated, it just meant that as soon as that stuff appeared with the strong Microsoft focus already in place, it was kind of like, it wasn't a sit back and wait and see thing. It was very much right, let's get into this head first. What's this going to do? How is this going to shift? What are the advantages, etc., etc. So we were very early adopters of cloud. I was looking the other day, I actually bumped into a funny little page online, and I think it says our tenant was set up in 2011, 2012, something like that. It was literally around the launch of Microsoft's formal BPOS style, pre-Office 365 cloud services. So we jumped in early, and it had some good successes with it, really. I mean, obviously those early years were fairly slow and sticky going in terms of getting customers there, but that was for a range of, like all the new technologies, it just takes a while to get going, right? I won't mention the magic AI word, but it feels very similar in terms of that sticky, slow beginning that turns into something useful eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of organisations that were formed around the same sort of time as Chorus, I think, have had so far this series. We've had Rob on from Infinity Group. They were founded in 2001. I think when I spoke to Mitt, who's now running Assurix, but he founded Netstar and MSP. I think he was 2001 as well. And they were very, very similar sort of journeys in that, started off kind of not knowing what you don't know and sort of diving into it with a great idea and a raft full of youthful enthusiasm, and kind of building the boat as it's sailing almost, to start with. And then as it matures and as the MSP, the IT service market has matured, the technologies have matured, and the sort of the business models have shifted and shaped around that.
Yes.
So with the sort of positioning with Chorus, if you during that period as you were growing and scaling, and as Microsoft were building out their product portfolio that you were able to take to customers, was Microsoft always a sort of the primary partner? Did you always position yourself as a Microsoft partner first and center? What did that sort of look like in terms of positioning?
Yeah, that was a day one thing, really. Really was truly day one thing. Again, purely background, right? So, stepped out of ICL, jammed in like one of those, like I know what they used to call them, like almost boot camp style MCSE camps. Really sucked up the knowledge fast. Microsoft brainwashed, for want of a better phrase, from day one, and just stuck with it, really. And then kind of grabbed relatively early on that I felt quite strongly that if we tried to be a little bit of everything to everybody in terms of technologies, as the various ones came along. So I don't know, the good examples I always get asked about are things like VMware and stuff, which we never dabbled with. I just felt that we weren't going to be able to really deliver the quality of service technically we want to deliver if we had to know everything. So if we stick to this, let's stick to this and be good at this. So and that Microsoft, and obviously, in a sense, Microsoft make that easy, right? Because their portfolio is broad, and therefore actually making the choice to stick with Microsoft, both in terms of your potential addressable market and the technologies you can choose to deliver in that market, you're not actually limiting yourself very much. So it wasn't exactly a tricky choice, but we also made a very conscious choice that nope, that's what we want to be good at and what we want to be known for. So let's do that.
Yeah, and even more so now with Microsoft. I think maybe if we were having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, you'd say the security part of Microsoft was probably a gap in the portfolio. And you now look at where they've got that product portfolio to, and it is as mature as everything else, and is always in those top segments of the Gartner quadrants, aren't they? And when it comes to security. And so you mentioned in your first sort of little intro that with how the business is now positioned, it's sort of got these core pillars across, managed services, dynamics, and security. So when did that sort of strategy, that sort of alignment start to take place in terms of those sort of three core pillars being, what underpins the business now moving into the future?
Yeah, so obviously the MSP, the kind of IT services, was the day one pillar. And then I mentioned that we made a really, really small transaction and kind of picked up this almost one-man band MSP early on, couple of years in. And when we did that, a handful of customers that MSP had built, they'd also custom developed an Microsoft Access based what subsequently, I didn't know at the time, but what we would now call a CRM system. And so we had this range of customers. We suddenly had this kind of custom CRM system, and not being a fan of stuff that isn't off the shelf, if I'm honest, I was kind of like, I don't like the long-term prospects of that. What are we going to do? Went back to Microsoft Toolbox and Dynamics. I think it was version 3 about that time was becoming an option, and so we kind of looked at it and went, okay, well let's start seeing if we can move some of these customers to Dynamics. So we started looking at, again, recruited and moved towards Dynamics version 3, and then ultimately version 4, which was kind of probably the first usable one almost. And we moved these customers over. So suddenly we kind of almost, I would say unintentionally, but certainly by a random path, found ourselves with a set of expertise and a capability to develop Microsoft Dynamics systems. And that obviously kind of grew from there, really. And it's been through its maturity now in terms of obviously cloud these days is all we do and have been for many years. And also within that space, our Dynamics practice has, we have a specific focus within the not-for-profit space, and we've built some IP there, and we work with some fairly big names, Bernardo's and other well-known charities. So we've become quite known in that space for that particular area. And then around 2018, actually, it was again, because we're very early on the Microsoft spec, when Microsoft, we were already looking at Defender products and we're interested in where that was going. But then they launched Sentinel. We kind of went, hey, do you know what? This is going to fit. This is going to fit for some of our customers. So we kind of started building out expertise and capability in that space very early from its launch. So in fact, we were a preview partner for it. So we got very early access. And then that's now slightly transitioned. Well, not slightly, substantially transitioned. So actually that part of our business is very different to the other two, because what we've done with that in the last few years is that we've separated that out, and now we're actually a vendor in that space. So we now deliver SOC as a service to other MSPs, and in particular we do that through channels. So we work with 6 distributors globally. We've got customers in 10 countries now. We deliver SOC as a service to other MSPs, and that's obviously, being a vendor is a radically different experience from being an MSSP or a Dynamics partner, right? So it's proving to be kind of like that's a very interesting path there, because they're definitely diverging slightly.
Yeah. So does that sort of that vendor model, does it have different? I guess it has different sort of operational, different contractual needs, everything down to how the service is delivered, because you're doing it out through the channel partners. Versus being a direct customer. So it's got lots of different needs versus a more traditional MSP route that you've worked in historically, then, I guess.
100%. One of those things, again, you kind of like, I'm sure most honest people, business people would tell you straight, you find yourself on a path you didn't entirely expect, right? So you make a decision, you don't fully appreciate 100% the consequences of that decision at the time you made it. And, we took a decision to go down that path, and suddenly you're learning a whole new range of skill sets, because obviously we've never operated as a vendor. We've never had to deal with distributors. We've never had to deal with partners in terms of supporting them for marketing or sales activities, or, and just the fun of, it's always challenging business, waiting to find out, as you build a plan, you execute a plan, you find your key people, you go out and you execute your plan, and then you wait for the results of that. But when you're doing that directly, that you're executing that plan, and also that you kind of know how long it's going to take you to kind of get some feedback on that plan and what's working, what's not. When you suddenly insert additional layers, and you're a vendor here, and you've got distributor here and partner here and then customer here, and suddenly you're 4 levels removed from the endpoint, you're kind of suddenly like, the waiting becomes a whole new skill. We quite often refer to ourselves as kind of ninja level waiters now. We're just super skilled at sitting around twiddling our thumbs and waiting patiently for plans to execute. So it's very different.
Yeah. I can imagine. And if we dive onto sort of the technology side in a little bit more detail, because it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on some of that side of things. And I think we're interested to hear from your perspective on if we start on the Dynamics side of things. As a partner in the Microsoft space, do you think the sort of the move in the start of this financial year to bring Dynamics and M365 and bring all that together underneath an umbrella solution area in AI business solutions, do you think as a partner that's supporting your ability to talk to customers in a more holistic way and bringing those solutions together, rather than Dynamics being one thing, M365 being another thing? Is that sort of helped the conversation?
I can see why they've done it. I don't know that right at this point. I think we're fairly early in that cycle. Is it making a huge difference to the nature of the conversations we're having? No. and I don't expect it to necessarily anytime soon. I think that I think the other thing is, again, back to a good example of Microsoft's scale, is that Dynamics itself is already a large umbrella now for Microsoft, right? So you've got those different Dynamics components underneath. Now, the particular component that we're specialists in, CRM, is as quite a different beast to Business Central or something like that, which is obviously a really key focus for Microsoft right now. Again, understandably so. So I think the way, the nature of conversations you have with organizations about Dynamics CRM is very different to the pace and nature of conversations you have with people about Dynamics Central, Business Central. So I think that, the nature of those conversations will probably be helped actually a lot by that move. I think the impact on the CRM side will be a bit slower. I'm not expecting it to have quite the same adjustment.
Yeah. And like I say, with Microsoft, I always think you've got to understand what Microsoft's trying to do from a marketing play, aren't they? That's effectively at the very top end, Microsoft are a marketing business. They're marketing products and solutions, but it's for us to sort of work out how that fits into our businesses and how to align to their agendas, isn't it?
100%. And that's, I think, obviously an awful lot of MSPs or MSSPs today are very naturally Microsoft orientated. It's not like that's an uncommon thing. And I think that's one of the skills that you just adapt and acquire and learn over time, is how to work with Microsoft, right? Because they do have very specific ways of working and how they work internally, how they work with partners, how they work with customers. And you do have to figure that out, because sometimes you'll look at it or see an example and you just think to yourself, why are they doing that? But the thing I always fall back on is that, in fairness to them as an organization, I'm probably being disingenuous to be fair, but 9 times out of 10 they're always right. It's probably more like 99 times out of 100, right? But they're usually right. So even if it looks a little bit iffy on the surface, I tend to stick with it and try and dig a bit deeper, because there's usually something clever going on underneath.
Yeah, just don't mention Nokia or Windows Phone to them.
No. I did say 99 out of 100. So pick which one you want to put in the 1 out of 100.
Yeah, I've always said Windows Phone is the one that always frustrates me, because it's the one missing link that could be so interconnected with the whole ecosystem. And Surface laptop devices are great. The whole ecosystem we've now got with 365 and cloud and all of these tools, and if we just had the bloody Microsoft phone, but I don't think they're going to go down that route again, are they?
No. I think Bill Gates only spoke about it recently, didn't he? And admitted that he considered it one of his biggest failings, if not his biggest failing in his time there. So, and I had one of their phones for, I don't know, however long it was, a year, 2 years, and it was a good phone at the time, right? They just never figured it out, did they? So, no. Can't win them all, but they've done all right to them, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the security side of things, and I know it's sort of a slightly different model for you guys in terms of the stock offering that you've got, but generally and holistically, I think from the conversations I've had over the last few weeks and on this topic, it feels like 2025 was maybe a little bit of an inflection point in the UK cyber industry. There were some big high-profile cases, and it felt like some of those cyber events were bleeding out of the technology world and actually into the real world. And your average Joe or Jenny on the street might have had some awareness of the M&S cyber attack, and they probably now know what ransomware is and got an understanding of the concepts of that, and that then bleeds back into businesses in terms of their need and I guess the priority that maybe it's being pushed with non-technical stakeholders a little bit more now. So one of the questions that I've been asking is just to, I guess, get our heads around, if you are an SMB, an FMC, or even like a mid or enterprise size organization, and maybe cyber and security, cloud security hasn't been high on your agenda. What are the easy wins? What are the sort of the starting points that you guys advise your customers? If someone's starting from ground zero, what are the baselines to start from?
Yeah, I mean, I think the nice thing to be able to say is that, to be honest with you, the good thing is we live in a world where there are really good options. This is not a challenge which cannot be tackled head on and dealt with fairly effectively, to be honest. Like everything cybersecurity or any security really is, nothing's going to be bulletproof. Nobody's going to make that pitch, and certainly not me. But it is factual to say that we have some fantastic options today. So you just have to be kind of aware, it has to fit with your business and go deliver it. I think the biggest thing we see by far, if I'm perfectly honest, is identity management. Identity management has been the red flag for Microsoft for a number of years. Again, smart people. It's not like they don't know what the problem is. And they've obviously very gradually been turning up the dial on forcing people to move towards the more secure options, mandating MFA on admin accounts. They've made it clear they're going to be mandating more and more and more in that regard. We live in a world where we as an organization, we're 100% passkey orientated now. I haven't known my password for any of my accounts at Chorus for years. And, we've got actual live customers now who are out there running full passkey deployed solutions with no passwords. In terms of their day-to-day experience, obviously the passwords are buried in the background. Hopefully we'll be able to turn that off soon. And I think, there's a genuine it's a solvable problem. It's a problem that you can really tighten the hatches down so tightly that you force the attackers to go pick on somebody and make it easier, right? It's not great for everybody else, but that's how life works, right? So it's good to be in a position where we can do that today, and certainly that's in terms of our SOC experience, that remains a primary source of issues for customers, is that identity and identity theft effectively. Breaches based on identity is definitely remains a sizable issue. So I think once that gets further along, then we can really get into, right, okay, now we're talking about closing down the last few percentage points of risks and getting it down to the minimum risk that any business wants to accept, really.
Yeah. And like you say, that bad actors will always go for the easiest targets that they can find, right? I think an analogy I heard the other week was, imagine you've got a burglar and a row of terrace houses, and they're walking down and they're testing every single front door handle, and if your front door's locked, then they're going to probably keep going and try and go into the handle that is locked. Now, if they really wanted to, they could stop at your house and they could smash the window in and come in and still do what they want to do. But if you put yourself in the strongest position by making yourself as secure as possible, will they potentially be able to get in somewhere? Yes, but it's about securing yourself and really ensuring that they go and sniff around somewhere else, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the nice thing again is SMB, SMC is always, because you're at a smaller scale, therefore you're more agile. It's that's just a fact of your size. It means that you can actually jump out and employ some of these solutions pretty rapidly, should you choose to do so. Enterprise has always got a bigger battle on its hands to do that, just because it has that large weight to drag behind it in terms of the scale. And therefore, they approaching enterprise security is a slightly different beast, because you have to really put your gun posts up on the corner and your watchtowers, and because you just can't fix all the holes in the walls as quickly as you'd like. So it's a slightly different stylistic approach. Ultimately, a lot of them are moving that way, and we'll get there, and we're seeing some of our larger customers definitely doing good movements in that space. But nice thing for SMB, SMC is you can really get some of these solutions pretty quickly.
Yeah, and a lot of SMB, SMC businesses have already got the tooling and features and ability to get it as part of their business premium, and that they're probably already paying for, but they're just not normally set up in the right way. I think default settings on business premium, they do a minimal job, but it's about, like you say, working with the right partner to be able to come in and actually get under the weeds of it, or having your own team to go in and enable what needs enabling, because a lot of the time you're actually paying for the stuff that can defend you anyway.
Exactly that. And obviously, because we're working with a lot of partners today, and on our cyber side, we have lots of MSPs as partners. So we're seeing that firsthand. And it's really interesting to see. Obviously, I think naturally, because our offering is a Microsoft offering, we're tending to find that our partners are skilled in the Microsoft ecosystem, and therefore they are deploying a lot of these solutions and are at least aware of them and how to sort of just get in there and make the most of them early on. So that's good for the customers. I think the general rising of the tide in terms of knowledge of those systems is no bad thing, because as you say, the tooling with Microsoft licensing, especially in the BP sub 300 space, and the announcement a few months back of being able to add in the equivalent of an E5 security license to BP with the Defender suite is fantastic, right? I mean, just the tooling available to any sized SMB's business now to make the most of security is amazing from the Microsoft space.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Cool. And then if we sort of swing it back round to Chorus, I think we left off with Chorus, having grown headcount to 20, 30 heads and having a few different pillars. If we look at Chorus now, what does that look like as a business in terms of headcount, team makeup? Just give us a bit of a feel for what that's matured to.
Yeah, it's a bit bigger now. So I think we're somewhere between 105, 110 headcount now. The Dynamics practice is the smallest, is relatively niche operation at doing project work. So I don't know what that is, 10 people, let's say 10, 12 people, something like that. And then basically the rest is split technically between the managed services, IT teams, and support operation, and cyber. They're both fairly sizable teams these days. And then obviously you've got surrounding functions for marketing and sales and finance, etc. But the two largest headcount bits, definitely cyber and the IT side, and obviously again just the nature of the beast and the space we're playing in and what we're doing. I definitely expect the cyber side to probably become the biggest this year. I expect, without question.
Yeah. And obviously that's a very different business to what you started out with. Was that always the plan? Has that sort of happened through opportunity?
Definitely not always the plan. To be honest with you, it's one of those things. Again, back to the joys of youth, right? I mean, the goal was always really, you just kind of have this idea in your head that you want to build a business, you want to make it the biggest business you can, right? And that's as far as your ambition goes. And you try and over the years you try and mature it a little bit. And what does that actually mean? What do I want to do? And you kind of you get a little more focused and controlled about it, definitely. But not going to lie, I mean, you're still roughing ready in decisions. I mean, I had the CEO role until 6-7 years ago now, and we brought in, I say we brought in an external CEO. Actually, it was she worked for us internally in other roles, and then came up through senior roles and became a director, and then we offered a CEO role. And that, for me, with that techie background, that was a big shift, but it was a brilliant shift, unquestionably the right thing to do. So our CEO these days is just perfect for that role. And then at the time, I think it probably had a little cry to myself. I think I did probably in the office when I told people hello when I went home. But without question, best decision, because you've got to have the right people in the right roles. And certainly as that business scaled through 70, 80 heads and north of that, it was painfully obvious that I was well at my limit and beyond it in terms of should I be in that role anymore, right? And so actually recognizing that and going, what, time to step back, let somebody else take on that stuff. It's really skilled in its own right. That was a good decision. So the business has definitely changed. You definitely get a little more controlled. You get a little more focused. You try and execute plans. You still get kicked and have to pick yourself back up and go, damn, that plan didn't work. On to the next.
And every stage of growth has its own operational realities that you have to understand and navigate. And it's interesting that you sort of been through the journey of stepping out of the CEO role and letting someone who's developed internally step into that as well. I always think there's a really good example of I don't know if you know Ben Francis, the CEO of Gymshark, which is now a multi-billion-pound company. He started that from his parents' bedroom, garage, or whatever. But he's always been really vocal about the fact that his business got to a point very quickly where he knew he wasn't capable of scaling the business in the CEO role. So he stepped out of that and then moved around the business and was, worked a role in marketing, worked a role in sales, worked a role in product, etc. To really understand what does, a multi-million-pound at the time, gym apparel business look like. And then he was able to step back into the CEO role. And ultimately, I think as well for yourself, it's, I would guess it's, where do you enjoy spending your time, right? Which is on the technology side and having, technology strategy conversations with customers, rather than, what's the operational process model of, idiosyncrasies of our service desk or of the, the HR function. It's probably less exciting to you than the tech side, right?
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that. I mean, you do all of it as you do any side. I don't care whether it's 2 people in the business or it's 20 or 200, right? You inevitably end up bumping into all of it, but it doesn't mean to say you're good at or enjoy all of it by any means. And I definitely have lots I could point out that I don't enjoy. So quite happy to hand that off to people infinitely more skilled than me.
Yeah. And was that, because obviously it sounds like you've been able to bring someone through and develop them into that CEO role. So is that sort of development of leaders internally, giving people autonomy and ownership to take ownership of practices or teams and ultimately then develop into more senior roles within the business as a whole? Is that something that you have got built into sort of succession plans?
Yeah, it was an attempt to do that. I mean, I think, being perfectly honest, as again, as I've read and talked to other people, that we probably went through a very classical cycle of trying to bring in some really experienced senior people who just from outside the company, they've done this before, they're great, let's bring them in, they'll be amazing. And then of course they never quite fit. It's not that they're bad, it never quite fits in your machine for whatever reason. So we tried that, and then we've done internal development, and like everything, sometimes that works really well and sometimes it works less effectively. And that's something I've learned over the years, because you always feel bad when somebody's not working out in a role and you think to yourself, have we done everything we can to make this work? And I always find, I'm still in contact with people now that worked at Chorus that we did move along because they didn't work in a particular role, who've got fantastically successful careers. And I think it's really important to acknowledge, just because you didn't have success in a particular role at a particular company at a particular point, it means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Yeah. It just meant that wasn't for you at that point in time. And I've seen them go on and do the exact role that we wanted them to do and couldn't quite make it work and be amazingly good at it somewhere else. So, but we always gravitate towards trying to give more opportunity to internal growth. And we made that an internal key metric, I think, probably, I'm going to say 8, 9, maybe even 10 years ago. We started tracking that as a KPI year on year, how much internal promotion we had versus external recruitment. And that precisely for that goal of wanting to make sure that our preference was to try and find good people and bring them in and bring them up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess as the Chorus journey has weaved its way through the wider IT service economy in the UK over the last few decades, how do you think customer expectations have changed in terms of what customers and businesses now expect from their IT service provider versus what they wanted back in the late 90s?
Yeah, that's shifted a lot. And, we joke internally in the last year or two, we've been joking a lot about the fact that, we're trying to measure how that's changed and how do we need to continue to adapt. And one of the things we've often joked about is the fact that, if you go back to that period many, many years ago, effectively pre-modern cloud, really, we were the IT equivalent of firefighters, right? You had a UPS died or a server fell over or an Exchange database got too big or whatever it was, and you could rock in as the hero with the P1 and drive to site or remotely fix it, and boom, 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 the business is back up and running. And quite frankly, you look like borderline legends, right? Now, you didn't want it happening too often, but it happened often enough to hope it pretty much naturally make you look good. Obviously, that's not the world we live in today. And that's a good thing, clearly. We don't want P1s all over the shop. So that's a good thing that we don't live in that world anymore. But it also means that customer expectations, I think, along with general societal shifts, have just moved the needle on that a lot. I think, we talk to our staff now, especially on the very front end of the business in terms of kind of first line help desk, that, these people are the same people as you. So when you go home and you're trying to contact Sky to get your problem sorted out with your billing or your account, you want a quick, fast service. You got a problem and you want it fixed. And also there isn't that opportunity to be led. You just need to get in there, get the issue fixed and move on, right? And that's the expectation individual staff from our customers are coming to us with. So we tend to try and, obviously we do all that sort of important stuff around measuring KPIs and SLAs and all that good stuff. But actually, I think my personal opinion is that's not the stuff that really matters. It's the the actual tangible experience of the customers today, because it's usually little problems that they want fixed. They're about to give a PowerPoint presentation, and PowerPoint's playing up, or we've got customers in the clinical space, and there's a nurse who's trying to enter notes on a customer into an IT system, and it's not letting her log in, or him log in. It's kind of like, okay, that's really, really important to them, and kind of getting that recognition of that and dealing with it appropriately is, I think, is a focus in a way that we just didn't have that kind of level back in the day. It was, is the server up? Is email working? It was less and less about systems. Obviously, the line of business applications today are just infinitesimally larger than they were many, many years ago.
Yeah. Like you say, it's all down, especially on the support side, down to the individual user and their experience, and what's impacting them right now, and how quickly can you remember that? Because like you say, sometimes, and it normally be, if it's got to the point where they've got to escalate it to the technology partner, it's enough of an issue for them to need to do it, and they need to do something now, right? And that's why they need support. And probably as well, a lot of managed service providers, I would imagine, like when you have sort of key metrics and KPIs, probably look at it from a higher level account base. So they go, right, account X, Y, or Z, how are we performing? What are our response times? What are our our escalation numbers, whatever it might be? But actually, it comes down to, that nurse trying to access their system, or that person that can't log into what they need to do their day job at the time, isn't it?
100%. And I think it's a really subtle shift. It's not that it wasn't there before, but again, like I said, because I think now it's less about big servers and on-premise stuff that collapses 10 times. Now it's a world of fairly seamless cloud access with thousands and thousands of custom line of business applications to your particular industry or your segment and space you work in. Just their expectations and their experiences are very different.
Yeah. And if we sort of reflected back on the last 27 years, Mark, and we go back to young Mark, full of enthusiasm and tearing off into the world of business with not a care in the world. What do you think Mark in 2026, with the wisdom he's now got, would tell a younger self?
Well, aside from the obvious, don't do it. And I just because as much as there's been plenty of pain over the years, it's I wouldn't do it any other way. So I don't know really. I think I just I think with hindsight, you always look back and you always think the things you could have done differently. So for me, again, I think that natural, we talked a fair bit today about the kind of technology background being fairly strong from day one. And I think with hindsight, I probably should have adapted sooner to recognizing that you needed a balance. You needed sales and marketing capability and just people with different thoughts and experiences bringing to the table. Would have got to that realization sooner. I would like to have reflected back, I think, hopefully. And because again, like anything in life, right, I think as you get older, you learn your lessons, you realize that actually a diversity of thoughts and inputs and opinions is actually is a really good thing, not a really bad thing. And when you're young and absolutely like that, it's hard to push you the shield on that sometimes. So I think I probably would have tried to soften myself up to that a bit sooner than I got there. But no, otherwise I think it's it's a slog. You keep your smiles on and you enjoy it, and make the most of it. Really, definitely, like I said, definitely want to go back and change it.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I think in terms of my own journey and running the business now at Cloud Decision since the MBA, I think my mindset has shifted maybe differently to where it has been before. And I think we have historically maybe been a bit more, let's try and, wear all the hats as often and as frequently as possible, but keep those sort of multi hats rotating around. Whereas I think now we're, probably, or we are investing more so in marketing, in sales, rather than sort of trying to drive that individually as much, because I think you can do it. It's more sustainable, and I think you can do it at a bigger scale. So
and I
cool.
think I was just gonna say, you got to we gave up when you make those decisions, you give up some stuff, right? You make a conscious decision that you're making a long-term investment here. You're not making an investment for the next quarter, really. You're making a longer-term investment, and you've got to recognize that and kind of commit to it, really, I think. But it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. Because as much as we would like as business owners to see the return in the first 3 months of a new function or a new person or a new outsourced partnership, it takes time to bed in and actually have a business impact, doesn't it?
100%.
And obviously with Chorus now, then, so you've got these these key pillars. Sounds like cyber is where you're expecting to see a lot of growth over the next year. If we look at Chorus in 3 years' time, what would you predict it looks like at that point? I know it's a big time period to predict across.
Yeah, I was going to say that's ambitious. Yeah, if I've learned anything, forget trying to predict 3 years. No, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that we remain confident in our plays in Dynamics and managed services. I don't think the UK market really allows them to be super stellar performers anymore. It's why there's been so much consolidation in that space in the UK market and other markets as well, but the UK over the last few years, because that's almost the only way to kind of get to a decent scale now is to do that. So I don't see that we will continue to push that, and I think we can do well in that space. We've made big commits. We deployed ServiceNow a couple of years ago, and for an MSP of our size doing that's a heavy commit, right? But it was about the future and delivering effectively to that market. So we'll do that. The cyber thing, obviously, because we've shifted that really should have a different dynamic to it. We're quite ambitious with that. Obviously, working in, like I said, 10 countries, 6 distributors, we're really expecting that to be marked growth. At the top end of ambition, I'd potentially like to see that double in size in the next 12, 18 months, which is also radically different to any scaling we've done previously. So I'm hoping that all the pain experience I've accumulated at the slow version will help with the fast version, but also I need the fast version to arrive. So let's wait and see if we succeed with that first.
Yeah. Like I say, every journey running a business is different, isn't it?
Yeah,
and you'll I'm sure you'll get through that journey of growing the SOC stuff and look back at it in 3 years' time and go, bloody hell, we didn't know what we were doing at the start, now we do.
yeah, I'm sure of it.
Awesome. Well, yeah, really interesting, Mark, to hear a bit more about your story and to what Chorus are doing now in the Microsoft space. I always like to finish the podcast with Microsoft Mentors quick fire round. It's just a few questions, different. Some of them are sort of a bit more specific. Some of them will be tech, non-tech, this or that. So fancy having a play?
Let's go for it.
Do you know what I've been saying since I started doing this podcast as well? Because I did this almost like episode 1, series 1. It's like I should really get a jingle, but I've never got around to doing it. But we start off with Copilot. Is it hype or is it genuinely game changing for businesses?
Game changing in a really narrow sphere.
All about use cases. Cool. What is one Microsoft product that you think is massively underrated?
Underrated. I'm going to say, I want to say two. Dynamics, I think, is underrated. It gets a pretty hard sell against, what I consult brand leaders like Salesforce. It's actually a really good product. It's a tougher sell. But actually, do you know what? To your point earlier about cybersecurity, I don't think all businesses and partners have quite picked up on how good the Microsoft security offering is.
Yeah. Still growing, aren't they? Their name in that space when they're competing against 30, 40-year veterans in the security space, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is AI replacing jobs or reshaping them?
Reshaping.
Yeah. Agreed. I think there's a lot of scaremongering that says we're all going to be out of a job, but I think it's definitely going to reshape them.
Yeah.
What is one mistake that you see people make when they're trying to progress their careers that maybe they can avoid?
think there's nothing wrong with ambition. Yeah, I had it myself. I think we've all got different styles of ambition, and I encourage people to make the most of their own growth targets. I think that I think I've seen a little shift in society. I think we all probably have, where we're all exposed to success at such a high level that I think there's a little bit of an expectation now that you can kind of hit certain bars a lot faster. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But experience counts for a lot. It doesn't mean you have to have 10 years of experience. That's not my pitch. But you have to have some experience. And I think I would advise people to just really weigh up. Do you think you have the experience you need at the level you're currently at in order to help you make the leap to the next level? If you do, and you do that right, I think you can make your career journey so much smoother, faster, and easier than if you get overambitious and think you're slightly ahead of where you probably are, because businesses and the people you work with will recognize that. So arm yourself more effectively by making sure you're really honest with yourself about where your experience is at. That's not to temper ambition. I support ambition.
Yeah, no, totally with you on that one. When it comes to computing devices, Mac or Windows?
Windows.
You'll be surprised. I've said it a few times this series. There are some covert Mac users out there in the and I've uncovered a few on Microsoft Mentors.
No, it's Windows all day long, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and final one. I always like to get behind the psychology of a Microsoft partner founder after a busy week on a Friday evening. What's your go-to takeaway?
Go-to on Friday. Well, I'm old enough that I try and be a bit healthier than takeaways these days, to be fair. But I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I'm not a big takeaway person, if I'm honest.
Yeah. What would be go-to Friday meal be then?
I'm a steak person, I'm afraid. So I'm a steak and peppercorn sauce person, me, all day long.
Oh yeah, man after my own heart. Peppercorn sauce, steak, some nice deep fat fried chips, and off we go.
It used to be deep fried fat chips, not anymore.
Yeah, I've still got a bit of youth on my
side. You got youth on your side, yeah, absolutely. I support your choice of deep fried chips.
I can get away with it still. Well, thanks very much for your time, Mark. So as I said, great to hear a bit more about you and your journey. It's good to know that you are Windows and not Mac. Obviously anyone that wants to reach out to Mark, as always, will be tagging Mark and Chorus in all of the links to the podcast. So feel free to reach out and make an introduction. And Mark, best of luck for you and Chorus for the rest of 2026. And be interested, maybe we catch up in a year or so's time and see how the sock piece has grown out. No, great to talk to you. Thanks for the chat. Really interesting, and very best of you for 2026. Let's hope we'll have a great year. Cheers, Mark. Cheers. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Whether you listen to us on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Both myself, Ollie Ridley, on LinkedIn, our guests, and also the podcast. The more people that we know are listening, the more time and investment we can make into the podcast and bring more conversations with our Microsoft mentors and leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem to our community. In the meantime, stay tuned and keep an eye out for next week's episode.